Every little thing I've done throughout my life put me in a place where I just added a bit more confidence and more comfort in being in front of people. And I've always been able to just walk up and look at somebody and introduce myself and ask them questions about how they became successful. And so,
Well, that's how we met. I think you walked up to me and you said hello, or I don't remember how that worked, but we met
of course,
that day.
I wanted to meet the most successful guy in the room. So
Well,
I waited my turn, and when the opportunity presented itself, I snuck in.
You still have my signature on that picture?
I do, actually. It's on my wall.
In today's ultra-competitive business world, being a successful entrepreneur or business owner can be very challenging. Fortunately, contemporary times have blessed us with resources for tackling those challenges and getting us to success more quickly than we could have imagined. Welcome to The Root of All Success with the real Jason Duncan, a podcast that explores how the world's most powerful entrepreneurs grow incredible companies. This podcast looks at the 5 keys to unlocking success as an entrepreneur. A successful educator turned entrepreneur, Jason's mission is to use his gifts of teaching and leadership to help others get the results they want out of life. Join Jason every week and learn the keys to grow a truly successful business.
So welcome back to the show. I'm the real Jason Duncan, and as you can see, if you watch this on YouTube, normally we're in a totally different location today, which I'm going to talk about later. If you're listening to this on any of the podcast players, first of all, thank you for joining me on the Root of All Success podcast today. I normally record these in Nashville, Tennessee. I'm just right outside of Nashville in Gallatin. I'm going to talk about where we are in just a moment. But if you are not watching this on YouTube, you really should go check it out. Of course, we're on all the podcast players, and thank you for listening. Please give us a 5-star review if you haven't done that. If you don't think we deserve a 5-star review, send me an email. Let's talk about what I can do to make the show better. But we're at youtube.com/C, as in channel, /The Real Jason Duncan. So you can find all of our podcast episodes with our guests. We record with 2 camera angles and a lot of really cool stuff that you can see where we're at each time we record. I've got an upcoming podcast tour that I'm going to be doing in California later this year. So I'm going to start doing these at different locations. But thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Thank you for allowing me to help you understand how to be a better and more successful entrepreneur. So as normal, as I said, we normally record these downtown Nashville, but today we're at a different location. And our location sponsor happens to also be the episode sponsor today, and also happens to be the main guest for our show today, which I'll introduce in just a minute. But we're recording live at the Music City Executive Airport in Gallatin, Tennessee, just outside of Nashville. It's one of the best regional airports in the area. And my friend who's going to be here as a guest on the show owns a hangar out here. He's based in Nashville, has operations all over the country, which we'll talk about later. But he has a hangar right here, and his helicopter is right here over my shoulder. If you're not listening, if you're just listening and not watching this, you're missing out. You gotta go watch this particular one. If you haven't watched any of them, you got to go do this. And over his shoulder, once he gets on camera, you'll see an airplane over his shoulder, and we've got lots of cool toys and airplanes that we're going to talk about today. But we're at the Flight Solutions hangar at the Music City Executive Airport in Gallatin, Tennessee. And Flight Solutions is a fantastic company for anybody who's interested in upping your game in the travel world. So if you're sick of all of the commercial travel and all the things you got to go through that, and you're a busy executive or a busy entrepreneur, and you want to figure out how to get to places quicker and get out of the trouble of just commercial traveling, Flight Solutions is your opportunity to do that. But not only that, but they do charter flights. They help service and maintain airplanes for their clients. They even buy and sell aircraft. If you're interested in buying or selling aircraft, Flight Solutions is the company that you want to talk to. If you want more information, you can send them an email. The email that's info@flightsolution.com. That's info@flightsolution.com. Or you can call them on the phone at 615-452-5001. They can assist you in booking your first-time charter. They can provide comprehensive aircraft management services to their owners. They can help you finance or purchase your first aircraft, and they can help you navigate all of the things that you need to know about in the private aircraft world. I've had the pleasure of flying on the helicopter that sits over my shoulder right here in the screen, and it is a phenomenal experience. I've only flown private a couple of times in my life, and it is worth it. You should really, really check it out. But go check out Flight Solutions. They're a fantastic company right here. Got a hangar right here in Gallatin, and we're happy to be a guest here on site. And we might have to hit the pause button as an aircraft starts up outside. But you should check this out. Make sure you check out Flight Solutions. Send them an email at info@flightsolution.com. All right, so let's go ahead and let me give an introduction of our guest today. So our guest today, I'm happy to say, is a friend of mine. We met quite by accident at a Nashville Business Journal Best in Business or Small Business of the Year award. I can't remember which one it was, but we met there and got to chatting, and I'd heard of him. I'd heard of him before. We live in the same town. I knew that he was local, and we got to chatting after the awards because his company was up for the award, as was my company at the time. And after the award ceremony, we're just chatting, and I said, "So where do you live?" And he said the name of the road. I'm like, "Hey, I live on that road." And we found out we're neighbors. We live down the street from each other, and we've developed a very nice friendship since then. And I'm so honored to have him on the show. He's the son of a two-time state senator and a police officer. His mom was a nurse. He's the youngest of 4 children. He was born and raised in St. Paul, Minnesota. Lives right here in Gallatin, Tennessee now, but jet sets and travels all over the world because that's what he does. That's his business. That's how he does what he does. He grew up riding, showing, buying, and selling horses and working more odd jobs than he can remember. One of those was DJing at a nightclub, and I don't know if we got time to talk about that, but I've never heard that story. That would be interesting. But aviation really is at the heart of everything that he does, and it's very much part of his passion, which I'm sure we're going to talk about today on the show. He obtained his pilot's license at the age of 17, and then he struggled with some health issues that almost ended his aviation career, which maybe we'll get into a little bit of that later as well. He has 2 business degrees, a pro pilot degree. He's worked at a college as a certified flight instructor, and he started his own business in his 20s, not in the 20s, he's not that old. But he started his own business when he was in his 20s, and it failed, and he lost all his money. And had to learn how to persevere and come back from that. And I know that we're going to talk about that a little bit today. In 1991, he ended up helping start a Starstruck Aviation with Reba McEntire, kind of his big foray into this particular business here in Nashville and in Gallatin. They've been here for 30 years. And then in 1997, he acquired the business and changed the name to Flight Solutions and has been rocking it out ever since. So he lives here in Gallatin. His wife Julie actually works in Flight Solutions with him in office management. He has 4 amazing kids, one of which he just played some music for me to listen to the other day, his son Connor. And that guy, you're going to have to look this kid up. He is really, really good. A singer-songwriter. It's going to be hitting the airwaves soon. I just know it. So maybe he'll brag on his son here, one of his sons here in just a few minutes. But I want to welcome our guest today on the Root of All Success podcast. This is Kevin McCutcheon. Thank you for being here, Kevin.
Well, my pleasure, Jason. It's you've said it perfectly. But as your neighbor, I also heard about you, so this is really a treat to be on your podcast, and I'm really excited as you are. So.
Well, I am glad that you let us do this because I know that when we first started talking about it, it's like, hey, I think you should be a guest on my podcast because I study and interview very super successful entrepreneurs like you who've killed it, who've done great things, and I'd love to have you on the show. And your idea, this was your idea. I'll give you credit. You're like, hey, well, let's go out to the hangar and let's do it out there. So this is great. So thank you. This is an honor and also very exciting too. For those that are not watching this on YouTube, they've got to go watch this episode on YouTube. It's going to be good. So can I ask you first, how you got started as an entrepreneur? You started a business way back in the 20s, like I screwed up in the in the intro, the roaring 20s. But in your 20s, you started a business and it failed. Tell our listeners about that story a little bit.
Well, being born and raised in Minnesota, and living and being the son of a fella that was very successful, very well known in his circles. He was very inspiring, my father. So all the kids were driven, and a lot of that had to do with my mother and my father's commitment to being great parents and supportive. And during college, I got this idea to start a flight services company. And it was I had a great idea, but didn't have the knowledge and the experience and the resources to implement it. And so it resulted in a kind of a false start. I launched the company. Interesting enough, it was called Flight Systems. Don't look that up. You won't find anything on it, but it was just me. I hired a young lady to work in my office, and it was my first attempt to start a concept of managing aircraft and promoting private aviation amongst business owners and business people. I quickly learned that this business requires a lot of resources. The equipment, the support required to operate it is quite expensive. So I ended up losing all my money and moving back in with my parents into the basement, which was humiliating, but had to regroup and reorganize and finish this is in between my pursuit of finishing college. So I had to regroup and finish college, and then I ended up going from there and working with a few different companies and building a flight operation for a fairly large real estate firm in the Twin Cities, which kind of led me to where I am today.
Yeah. So for those that listen to this show, typically our listeners are ambitious and eager entrepreneurs who are either killing it already or want to kill it.
Sure.
And they can look at a guy like you sitting here in this amazing hangar with these multi-million-dollar toys that are around us that are tools for people to execute business, and it didn't start successfully. It started with a failure, but then through that failure, you learned a lot of things that led you to now successfully manage and navigate that world. So I think that's a great encouraging story, and I didn't know that. I guess that has never come up over our poker games. We've never talked about that.
Thankfully, we still have things to discuss.
That's right. We have not exhausted
more
each other.
secrets to be revealed.
So go ahead.
No, go ahead. I was going to add to your point there is that, and I've heard you talk about this though. Some of the greatest lessons you learn are found out in your failures, and that particular situation for me taught me a lot. And there was some dovetailing there with a mentor that I met through all that really changed my life as well. And that's going to lead to all success is rooted in those experiences and the connections you make. So certainly for me.
Were you successful as a DJ in college?
I was actually. I was really good at it. I DJ'd at a nightclub in Minneapolis. I've always loved music, which is an interesting marriage that evolved for me down here in Nashville, putting aviation and the entertainment industry together, which we have turned out to be very involved with here in Nashville. But as a DJ, it taught me a lot. Speaking publicly, so in meeting a lot of interesting people. But I'll leave it at that.
I can't even imagine, but I'm sure it was an interesting time in your life. So at some point in your story, you ended up meeting Reba McEntire, who, for those in Nashville or if you're a country music fan, you obviously know her. And what's interesting about Reba is that my daughter, who is 18, loves her television show. I know it's not anymore, but I never watched it, only because Kylie watched it around the house. But she's a big fan, maybe not as much about the music, the night the lights went out in Georgia, like I was growing up. But how did you meet Reba? Because she's phenomenal as a musician and evidently as a business lady. So how did you meet her?
Well, it's a very interesting story. Born and raised in Minneapolis, St. Paul, I was a rock and roll guy. Other than being at the barn with the horses and having the country music playing in the background, it generally wasn't my first choice. I was kind of a rock pop guy. But it's very interesting. I worked for a real estate company in the Twin Cities, and we started with one airplane and grew that to eventually be 3 aircraft, a couple jets, for those that know, a large corporate turboprop. And I was flying for the company and the chief pilot running the flight operation. We later expanded into charter. We were certified to do charter flights. And through that process, we put one of our aircraft up for sale, one of our jet aircraft. And I received a phone call, and this is back in the 80s, where everything was done by phone and fax, FedEx, or overnight packages. There wasn't a cell phone in sight, and there wasn't, the internet and things of that nature. But I received a phone call from a very well-known attorney in Los Angeles. Said he was inquiring about the aircraft we had up for sale. And so we chatted a little bit on the phone, and his name was John Mason, a very well-known entertainment attorney. At the time, I didn't know that, but he represented that he had a client that was interested in purchasing their own aircraft, who had been chartering, but was looking at purchasing their first aircraft. Of course, being in L.A., I presumed it was somebody in L.A., and at the time, it had been rumored that Arnold Schwarzenegger was looking for an airplane.
Uh-oh.
So I was thinking, well, wouldn't that be really cool?
Get to the chopper.
Yeah. So as this evolved, they became very interested. We agreed on a pricing, and they were very interested in seeing the aircraft. And so we do things in the business that, like you would if you went to a car dealership, you'd test drive a car. Well, in our business, we do a demonstration flight. Obviously, we have to provide the crew. It's not something you can jump in and drive yourself. But we worked through this process, and he sent over the itinerary as to where we were going to go, pick up the client, take them on a few city tour, and then bring them back. And it was Nashville, Tennessee. And I thought that was odd. That's certainly not Arnold Schwarzenegger country. So at some point, it was revealed that it was Reba McEntire. And I'm embarrassed to say this, but other than knowing a little bit about her, I didn't know the first song that Reba sang. So thankfully, my boss's assistant was an avid country music singer. And I went down to her office and I said, hey, this is who we're going to be flying come this weekend in Nashville for this demonstration flight. And she about fell out of her chair and quickly brought me up to speed about how amazing this woman was and how excited I should be to have this opportunity to meet her and fly her. So we flew to Nashville, picked her up at this airport, Gallatin, Tennessee. It was much different back 30 years ago. And I was blessed and privileged to meet Reba McEntire, fly her to 2 concerts over the weekend, was invited out to her house and had a lovely lunch. And we had a great time and started talking. They were in search of an aircraft. Prior to that, they had had a horrible experience, which caused them to want more control over their flying, their private flying. And at the time, her career was exploding, and she was flying to every show, and had to. She had a young boy who, his name was Shelby, was only a year old. She wanted to be home and not on the road the whole time, to be with her boy. So we flew this weekend together. They ended up not buying the airplane because it didn't have enough range, and they just needed more airplane than what it was. But we ended up developing a great relationship. And over the course of the next few months, they would call and ask me advice about, well, we're thinking about this airplane. We're thinking about, what do you think? And it turns out that the airplane they ended up deciding they needed was the same type of airplane we were adding to our operation in the Twin Cities, which was a Hawker jet, Hawker Siddeley, a great airplane, very, very popular business jet. And so I started assisting them with that kind of on the side. And during these conversations, I don't know if it was Reba or her husband Narvel at the time, but jokingly said, well, it's too bad you don't live in Nashville. You should just come work for us. And I laughed it off because, I'm a Minnesota boy and I'm I have a great job, great flying career right in my backyard where I grew up at the St. Paul Home and Field. And I hung up the phone and didn't think about it. Well, it wasn't long after that my boss called me in for my annual review, and I had grown our charter business. I had done a lot of great things for the company, and the president of the company felt like I was going to be well rewarded. And I went in to meet with the CEO for my review, I reported directly to the CEO, and I was woefully disappointed that his idea of a reward was like a nominal 3% pay increase. And, I'm an employee. I was the director of operations and vice president of the flight ops for the company, but it was my first real understanding of the difference between working for myself and working for somebody, and what limits might be put on me. And as being an entrepreneur at heart and always willing to go out and try new things, I really did some soul searching. And so I went back to the conversation with Reba Narvel, and the next time we were on the phone together, I brought that back up, and I said, "Were you serious about this?" And they said, "Oh, absolutely. We would be thrilled if you came down and were our pilot." And I said, "Well, I'm not interested in being your pilot, but I am interested in being your business partner." And they loved the idea.
Wow.
They love the idea.
So you took the initiative to make that conversation more about employment and partnership.
Yes. Because I knew in my heart that's really what my dream was, to own my own business, to follow my passion. I'd found my passion. Aviation was absolutely my passion. Yeah. So combining that with a business, it was perfect. So I had to figure out a way to make my dream come true. And that at the time was working out something with Reba and her husband and convincing them that instead of hiring a pilot, they need to bring me on as a partner, start an aviation company in Nashville, which is what I'd already done in the Twin Cities to a smaller degree, and take this to the next level. And they love the idea because Reba, as many of you already know, was very entrepreneurial, was already involved in numerous businesses, recording studios, management, publishing. Of course, she herself had a phenomenal career that still had a long ways to go. It was future was going to show us that it was just blossoming. And everything you think you know about Reba is true. She's an amazing talent, but an amazing businesswoman, and really a pleasure and joy to be around. So it was a wonderful experience.
And so that's how you got to Nashville, got in business with her at the same time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I went in and told my boss I was leaving, which he didn't take very well, and spent about a month trying to talk me out of it, and actually called me crazy at one time. Because I look back and it was crazy. I mean, I had a great job, right in my hometown, and I'm going to go to Nashville and partner with a country music singer. And even after I moved down, called and was checking in to make sure I was happy and that my job was still open if I wanted to come back. But
so let that be a lesson to all these CEOs who are doing the employment reviews. 3% could lose your employee.
Yeah,
they're good.
Make a point on that. Yeah,
give them more money.
Well, it's a balance, right?
Yeah.
So compensation comes in many different forms.
That's right. I mean, I think that, and what I teach people in my university and my coaching clients is that there are three things why people work for people. Number one is opportunity. Number two is recognition. And number three is money. Money's in the top three, but it isn't the top one. Like, people want to be recognized. And had you walked in there and he'd recognized you in some other way or given you a better opportunity and a little bit of money, you and I might not be sitting here having this conversation. But I'm glad that he did, and I'm glad that it worked out, because I'm glad to have you as a friend, and I'm glad you're on the show.
Well, and if he's watching, I do want him to know that I learned a lot, and it was an amazing experience. And although it didn't work out in the end, he gets it because he's an entrepreneur himself.
Yeah.
And he went through the same process of working for other people and finally listening to that voice and taking the chance. And so when I came down here, I took a pay cut. I worked for half the money and a percentage of the business. So it was a big risk. But I knew it was right, because when I went to the U-Haul dealership, and they went and got my box truck, and they pulled it around front. It had Nashville on the side of it.
It was a
Now,
sign.
maybe they planned that, but I took it as a sign.
So now that was in 1991, right?
Correct.
So in 97, so 6 years later, you acquired the whole business from Reba. So talk us through how that happened.
Well, at that time, the Reba's business organization was going through some changes. They were refocusing their interests, and that's a whole nother conversation, but it gave me an opportunity at the time to present them with an idea to acquire the aviation business. And it ended up working out, and over the course of a year, I acquired the aviation business, changed the name to Flight Solutions, and it was another interesting time in my life because having the prior experience of being in a place where you lose all your money and you move back home, I certainly didn't want to repeat. So when I acquired the business, it did. I had to do some leveraging because these aircraft are not inexpensive, nor the infrastructure that supports them. So I worked out the leveraging piece and put it all together and executed that over the course of 12 months. And when you do that, that's a big gamble and a big risk. You're going all in on yourself, right? And that's exactly what I did. And there was a few nights staring at the ceiling, what have I done? But it paid off with spades.
Well,
so.
I think every entrepreneur has that story of that staring at the ceiling. I talk about it in terms of this invisible horizontal line that runs through the life of every entrepreneur, and only the entrepreneur is able to see this horizontal line. And the line, below the line, is you're out of business. Probably bankrupt, things bad happen below that line. And as an entrepreneur, you're the only person who can see how close you are to that line at any given moment. And so there are days when you're really close, there are days when you're really high away from it, and it's that roller coaster up and down, up and down, up and down, up and down. It's not a hockey stick straight up and to the right. It is very close to that line all the time, and I know how you're feeling. And if an entrepreneur who's listening has never experienced that, they're not doing it right. Something's wrong. They haven't learned anything, because failure is the better teacher than success.
Absolutely correct. You don't want to be taught. You want failure to teach you too much, but you got to be winning 51% of the time, right?
That's right.
So through that transitional period, it obviously the bet paid off.
Right.
Big. I've been incredibly blessed with that choice.
But you're not just in aviation now. You've got oil and gas and real estate and other things. I mean, tell us a little bit about your...
Well, I was in the oil and gas business with my brother for 20 years. We actually sold that piece of the company off a number of years ago, I think right around 2015. But that, as you are blessed in your main course of business, you then are privileged to have the opportunity to invest in other ideas, which has continued. So aside from owning Flight Solutions 30 years now and expanding that company into other cities and doing business worldwide, I've had the privilege of investing in other businesses such as oil and gas, which was with my brother, real estate, both commercial and residential, and also in the insurance business. I'm also in the insurance business as well. So
I forgot. I forgot about that. Cause
yeah,
I know who your business partner is in the insurance business. Yeah. So
have you called him yet?
Maybe he needs to be the sponsor of our next
but
episode.
we aside from home and auto and all the usual things, which my partner Chris Ingram is an amazing guy, and I'll pitch him here too. Check it out, Ingram Agency. We also are offering aviation products as well, so which is a nice tie-in to what I currently am doing with Flight Solutions, because every aircraft we manage, every aircraft we sell needs insurance.
Yeah.
So it's a natural fit for us. And Chris is an amazing guy. I've known him for a long time, and it's been a real privilege to be a partner with him as well.
So let's talk about success. The name of the podcast is The Root of All Success, and it's about how entrepreneurs like you grow incredible companies. So you've grown Flight Solutions, although you didn't found it originally. You took it over and then grew it beyond its wildest dreams, which makes you in the top tier of entrepreneurs who've taken risk and innovated. So in terms of success, like how does Kevin McCutcheon define success?
If I had to put it into a couple simple words, the words that come to mind are faith, perseverance, and information. I feel like when I combine those through the most difficult times I've had, when I was struggling or I was moving into a new area, or talking back to when I acquired the business from Reva, those moments, I got through those times by, first off, being rooted in my faith. But secondary to that was the perseverance, the energy, the drive, the stick-to-itiveness, pick yourself up and keep going, because we all know, and you know this very well, is that this is not a part-time job. And it's not a full-time job. It's a lifestyle when you choose to be an entrepreneur. You are attached. And that's why I've always said, if you're going to be an entrepreneur, if you're going to start a company, find something you have a passion for, because it just makes everything else easier. And so those are the keys that I would have to point to that have been the root of my success.
So with that as the concept of what you describe success, do you consider yourself to be a successful person?
Almost.
Really? Why almost?
Because most would consider me successful, but you don't know what measuring tape they're using, right? So I look at others let's put it this way, most all my clients that I work with are vastly more successful than me. So I'm always wanting to be a little bit uncomfortable with maybe where I'm at in my lot in life. And that can come in different areas. That certainly can be financial. It's not my fault the world is designed the way it is, and it requires money to gain the sense of freedom such as a private aircraft can offer you. When you have a private aircraft, your sense of freedom quadruples. I mean, you can pick up and leave. You avoid so many headaches and distresses, and you just can go about as you want to, mostly. But going back to that almost piece, it kind of takes me back. My wife was a competitive ballroom dancer. Julie.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. Amazing lady. Competitive ballroom dancer, and 4 kids, works in the business and dancing. Now she's into horses, so she's kind of segued into horses. But during that time, I felt like I needed to take some lessons. So I went to the studio, got an instructor, because they said don't ever try to learn from your spouse. So I got an instructor, took her through a few lessons, because I wanted to be able to get on the floor and at least not be too embarrassed. But my instructor, wonderful gal, no matter how hard I tried, I was what I was, right? I wasn't going to be this world-class dancer. And I loved what she said to me whenever I would try to, she was trying to teach me something. Instead of saying that's not right, or you're not doing it right, or, being negative, she said, almost. And that was her way of saying, well, we need a little bit more work. And I love that, because I feel like life, it's okay to always be enveloped in the journey and almost be there, because you keep inspired. You always want something there that you're working towards, and that's why I think I'm almost. And that's financial, that's spiritual, that's family, that's friends, that's relationships. You're always, tell me what any of those I just listed don't require work.
Yeah, they all do.
Yeah,
and I think your perspective is certainly, I appreciate it, understand it, get it, and I think a lot of listeners will too, because from the outside looking in, everyone from the outside looking in uses different measuring tape than we use in our own lives to measure success. And I love how you said that. Success, the definition of success as the dictionary defines it, is the achievement of the desired result or the desired goals. So if you said, hey, I want to own an aviation company that does X number of millions of dollars in revenue, and I want an aviation company that owns this many planes or helicopters, whatever. Once you achieve that, then, and by dictionary definition, you're successful. But you and I both know, as successful entrepreneurs, is that success grows. You reach one goal, you're like, okay, that was great, let's do it again. And it never feels as good as you think it's going to feel to reach that goal, because now you want another one, you want another one, you want another one. So to your point, yes, almost. I like that. I like that.
Well,
almost.
in the cliche, you hear this all the time, that it's about the journey, not the destination. And we've all heard that before, but I guess we keep hearing it because it's so true. And I enjoy the journey. Getting there is great, and celebrating and getting something achieved and accomplishing whatever, be a fiscal reward or a new aircraft, or we do a lot of fun things in the completion space. I have aircraft right now at major shops being completely renovated, and those are great experiences when you get them out the other end after all the moving parts have to come together to make this aircraft incredibly beautiful and ready for its new owner, and shaking the hands and delivering and handing the keys over and giving them a model. And those are great celebratory moments. But as soon as that plane flies off into the sunset, what do you want? Let's go get another one.
Let's do it again.
So, and that's the privilege. If I have to pick one thing that I feel like I'm most fortunate about when it comes to business, is finding the passion. I found something which I'm very passionate about. I've been doing this my entire adult life, and I still get excited about an aircraft taking off. Like if one of our airplanes was starting up out front, we'd stop the podcast and we'd go watch it take off. And how many aircraft have I watched take off or fly? I'm privileged to have been able to fly. You're going to cut that out. I'm privileged to have flown more types now than I can remember, including helicopters and aircraft and fixed-wing aircraft. And that's an immense privilege, and I don't take that for granted.
Well,
I'm
and
really
I can
lucky.
see that. I mean, you talked early in the show about passion, and to me, when I teach the keys to success, and as I've interviewed dozens and dozens of very successful entrepreneurs like you, passion is always the first thing that I notice. But I think that there's two sides to that passion. There's the emotional side of passion, which I think is what you were referring to. Like aviation's in your blood. You had your pilot's license at 17, tempted to start your own company, Flight Systems, in your 20s, not in the 20s, but in your 20s, and then you eventually own Flight Solutions. So it is a passion for you. You love flying. You've got a helicopter, you've got a helicopter on your mailbox. I'm like, I could tell it's everything in you is passionate about it. But the other side of passion, the actual etymology of the word means willing to suffer, willing to endure. And so in terms of faith, you talked about being a man of faith and faith being part of your success definition. The passion of the Christ wasn't that he was excited to do it, but he was willing to do it. He was willing to do it because of a bigger cause. And I found that in successful entrepreneurs' stories, there was that level of passion that superseded the joy, because there have been lots of people who have been successful that never had the passion you have about aircraft, about their business. But they were able and willing to push through. That's where the passion pushes through. Has there been moments in your life, and this actually refers to kind of back to that horizontal line thing, because if you don't have passion, the willing to endure, you're not going to make it. Can you think of stories, one or two, in your history as the owner of Flight Solutions where your willingness to endure was actually the thing that made it work, where if you hadn't had it and walked away, it'd have been done?
Oh, sure. I think I can think of that in almost everything I've done. Passion is a very important piece of the puzzle. But we all have to remember, as an entrepreneur, it is a puzzle with multiple pieces. There's no one element that's going to drive you to success. So passion, though, is that energy that drives your vision, that drives the mechanics, and that other people feed off of. So if I come in and I don't have passion, it's going to be unfair for me to probably expect my employees to be passionate. Although I have some amazing employees that I feed off of, so I'm very blessed that way. But there's one in particular situation, of course it's tied in with the overall economic status, of the world economy. Aviation, especially business aviation, tends to be quite sensitive to the economy. and if it's doing good or if it's doing bad. Interesting enough, we are seeing records broke right now in the number of private aircraft transactions going on, certainly here in North America, which would probably be interesting given what we've been going through and what we're coming out of. But if I go back to the I have to laugh that I'm old enough to remember all these now, or that I lived through them. But the Great Recession in '08, that was devastating to private aviation. The preceding decade led to an OEM buildup of oversupply. Well, when '08 came, the bottom fell out, and it fell out hard. Everybody called it the Great Recession. In our industry, I would probably say the word depression would be more appropriate. So it put everything I had to the test, both financially and personally, and drawing on my faith and trusting what I knew the outcome could be, and what I was trying to mechanically manipulate it not to be. And that's another thing I talk about or understand about. You get caught in mechanical manipulation of your surroundings, and you cut everything else out. That can be a lead into failure. But back to what I was saying, '08 was very challenging. I saw aircraft in our managed fleet be repossessed, where the bank came and said, "We're taking the plane." It was, nothing's happened since, and nothing happened prior like that ever. Yeah. And then I went through the dot-com bubble, when it burst in 2001. And then, I've been around long enough for the recession in '91, which is interestingly, when I started Star Trek Aviation and Flight Solutions back in '91, we were just coming out of that recession.
Seems like those happen every 10 years or so, don't they?
Make a note about that.
Yeah, there's another lesson for
I wouldn't say you could set your clock to it, but I think you'd be pretty close.
Yeah. So the first P of the 5 keys of success, I put them in alliterative forms because it's easier to remember that way because I'm an old school teacher. But I would say number 1 is passion. The second key to people's success, and I'm pretty sure this is for you as well, is right place, right time. And it sounds to me like being in the aviation industry in St. Paul in Minnesota, when that phone call came in from California was it John Mason?
John Mason.
John Mason called in. You were right place, right time because you didn't know who
I
that
answered
was.
the phone.
And
yeah.
the third P is knowing the right people. And as it turns out, that right place, right time, and right people sounds to me, based on just someone listening to your story, that all converged in that phone call with John Mason, which led to the relationship with Reba. Is that true?
Absolutely. I would clarify that statement, though, by saying right place, right time might be perceived by some as being lucky. But I think it has to be understood that the right place, right time piece is as much about putting yourself in the right place at the right time. Yeah, so it still requires action. Because, I've had that occasion where someone's looked at me and said, "You're so lucky." And of course, all of us that have risked everything to get where we're at, find humor in that because, okay, you could argue maybe it was lucky I was here or there, but really looking back, I put myself in those positions, in those places, because of my boldness and my drive and my passion to walk up. Every little thing I've done throughout my life, like you enjoy this for some reason when I DJ'd, put me in a place where I just added a bit more confidence and more comfort in being in front of people. And I've always been able to just walk up and look at somebody and introduce myself and ask them questions about how they became successful. And so,
well, that's how we met. I think you walked up to me and you said hello, or I don't remember how that worked, but we met.
Of course,
that day.
I wanted to meet the most successful guy in the room, so I waited my turn, and when the opportunity presented itself, I snuck in.
You still have my signature on that picture?
I do, actually. It's on my wall.
Well, what's interesting is that, that phone call that came in ended up leading to the whole relationship with Reba, but you said something very, very, very important that listeners have to understand, is that luck has very little to do with it in the truest sense of the term, where whoops, I'm here and bam, it happened and I had nothing to do with it. The harder you work, the luckier you get. And as entrepreneurs know, who are listening to this just like you put yourself in those places. So for example, in your story, when Reba's husband, was it her husband who mentioned, hey, I wish you lived in Nashville, and then later you called and said, are you serious about this? Because I'm interested. You made that phone call, and then you also turned it up a notch by saying, I don't want to be your pilot, I want to be your partner. You put yourself in that position, you put yourself in that place, and that turned your luck, as it were, to where we're sitting today.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Now, here's where the story gets very personal for me and you don't even know this, right? So I have been interviewing casually successful entrepreneurs like you for a long time, just out of pure curiosity, because I was an unemployed school teacher when I started my company, and I grew it to multi-million-dollar status. And I would think I'm lucky, but I understand what we just talked about. It wasn't really luck. I put myself in places and had great people around me, mentors, advisors, partners, etc. But as I've interviewed these successful entrepreneurs and asked them about these three things, my theory was passion, place, and people were the three keys, because they appeared every single time. And when you and I talked, we were sitting at the Standard, and we were just chatting in the library one day, and we were talking about this, and I was pitching these questions at you, and I don't even know if you remember this conversation, but I was asking you, and I said, well, do you think those are the three keys to every entrepreneur's success? And you are the one that said, well, actually, Jason, there's a couple more. And that's why this is now 5 P's of success and not 3. And you don't even know this. So when
I don't.
When you said that to me and you pitched out, well, you got to have the know-how to do it, and you got to have the resources to pull it off. That's what you said to me. And I went home and I thought, man, he's right. So I started going back to all the other people I had asked those 3 questions to about passion, place, and people. And I said, tell me about your preparation. How did you of course, I put it in P's, preparation and plan, which we'll talk about. But I said, how did you prepare for it, and what was your plan to get the resources to do it? And they had answers. And I thought, well, I'll be doggone. There are 5. And now it's not just the passion, people, and place. It's passion, place, people, preparation, and plan. And you just mentioned preparation, because you said I had to have the know-how to pull this thing off. And then your plan, you actually mentioned that early in your failed attempt at flight systems, was you didn't have the resources required, which is the way I think of in terms of plan. It's not business plan, it's what's my strategy to obtain and deploy the financial resources. So you, unbeknownst to you, changed my entire theory about success, about the keys to success, in that short conversation at the Standard that night. And now I'm interviewing people just like you about, well, tell me how you got prepared to be successful. So what do you think about that?
Oh my gosh. I'm touched. I had not heard that story.
Yeah.
And
well,
that really touches me, because I really believe in what you're doing. And one of the things I've noticed about you from the very first time I met is you're what I call an enlightener. You seem to bring light to things. And even if it's right in front of someone's nose, your way, your presentation, and I know you're very faithful as well. You just have this natural way about pointing things out and enlightening people and putting light on things. And I'm just honored. I hadn't heard that story, so that's very touching.
Well,
to be a part of the 5 Ps. I'll think of some more now.
So I'm honored. I'm honored that you pushed back, because I know not that everybody else was super just polite and acquiesced to anything I asked them. Yeah, that's right, Jason. You were like, no, actually, there's more than that. There's this idea of preparation. And so I want to ask you about those 2 keys for you. And I kind of get a sense about where they are, but I want the listeners to get a sense of preparation is the 4th key to success for entrepreneurs, and that is, do you have the know-how to do it? And my example that I typically give in this is that, Elon Musk was able to get into SpaceX because he was prepared to do it. Like, he had studied, he'd made the right connections. But if you'd have gone back 30 years before that, he was not prepared to do that. I'm not prepared to go into biochemical engineering startups, because I don't know yet. I'm not prepared to do that. But when I started my first big company, I knew how to sell. That was the level of preparation I had, and then my preparation grew over time. For you, aviation, you were prepared from an early age because it's always been in your blood. Was there a special or specific thing that prepared you for your tremendous success in Flight Solutions?
Well, of course, study. You have to have information. You have to have knowledge. All the passion in the world isn't going to help you land a jet airplane without the tools and the knowledge to do it successfully. And that's very true in business. And it's never a place you arrive. It's a constant. And in my business, in all my dealings, I'm constantly learning and investigating and researching. One big piece of our business is research. We are constantly researching markets. But all that, we can talk about the complexities, the Elon Musks and all these but my daughter just gave me a perfect example this morning. She has to give a presentation at school in front of the class, and they did this kind of lottery thing, and she ended up with a subject that she wasn't terribly excited about. I think it's about quarks, protons, and neutrons. She would probably shame me right now for not getting it right, but she was practicing on me last night. She knew nothing about it, selected the topic, and wasn't excited about it, but she is studying, she's learning, and she's now going to be at a point where she can get up in front of the class and give a presentation about neutrons, protons, and all the things that go with quarks. And I think I'm saying it wrong, so forgive me.
I taught history. I have no idea.
Yeah. But this is a young lady who's 13 years old, didn't know anything about this subject prior, and she's going to know something about it. And I think that's a great lesson for all of us. You have to have the information and knowledge if you're going to succeed in a given area. You have to. I had a great mentor way back in the days. His name was Mike Duffy. I think we've actually...
Oh, that's right.
We've had...
Yeah.
He introduced me to Grand Marnier, and to this day, he's no longer with us. Incredible man. If I have a Grand Marnier, which isn't too often, I promised him on his deathbed that I would always toast him, because he introduced me to Grand Marnier. But one of the things he really, really ground into me was information is king. Whoever has the most typically wins. And I think that is so true. I really do. And I try to, when it's buying and selling an aircraft or whatever you might be doing in your various ventures, the more you know, especially the more you know than your competition, the better your odds are that you're going to win that deal or you're going to make the right decision. And you can really apply that to anything in life. And so that's something I try to adhere to. I spend many a night after everybody's gone to bed researching and studying, and it does help having a passion for it.
Yeah.
And especially when it results in success.
Yeah, well, but like you said, passion's not going to carry you through. You can have passion, you can have be at the right place at the right time, know the right people, but if you're not prepared for that, it'll be a flash in the pan and over.
Well, preparation in our business of aviation is essential. It's a huge topic. All the things that go to preparing for a successful flight are very relevant in the aviation industry. The maintenance side of it, the piloting side of it, the dispatching side of it, to allow our customers to board an aircraft, get to their destinations, and get to their business meeting or whatever, the concert, whatever they're doing, requires a lot of preparation. We have variables we can control, and we have others we can't control, such as weather, things of that nature, or unscheduled delays. But preparation is essential in our business. I would think it's true in all businesses, but certainly in ours, it's right up here.
Yeah, and you prepared. You at 17, pilot's license, started working as a flight instructor. I mean, that prepared you today, because now when somebody says, I'm thinking about this airplane, you're not talking about it as a very expensive tool. You're like, I know how this thing works. Yeah. I could tell you why you need this thing and why you don't need that thing. And so your preparation led you to success. And then the fifth P is plan. And of course, I put them in alliterative terms, PPPP. But plan means the strategy to obtain and deploy the resources. Your first business venture failed because you didn't have a plan, or your plan failed. So tell us how your plan, you said you had to leverage out, and there were some sleepless nights when you acquired the business. So what was your plan, and how did that lead to success for you?
I still have my business plan. So when I learned a lot from that first failure, and then I learned a lot from other successful business people that I worked with. And again, I go back to the job I had in the Twin Cities. Although I left there, and I left there as an employee, I learned a lot being a part of a big organization that was in the real estate business, and listening to how they plan things out and how they approach things. I took from that a lot to apply to my own business. And I still have in my closet my business plan that I developed to convince those that invested in me when I did the acquisition to put their money on the table with me. And so I still have that to this day, and I look at it, and of course I laugh a little bit because it was obvious there were still things to be learned in there, but still though, it was a great place for me to transition through. I took all these great ideas, great energy, and I mechanized them basically, and put them into a plan that I could refer back to over and over again. And the other thing about having a written plan is it's a great backdrop to measure your success, right? So I go into the idea that I'm going to do this, this, and this, and I got my financial spreadsheets all figured out, my 5-year goals, and it's really neat to pull that book out when I thought $1 million was the home run of the century. And looking back at that and be able to measure what I've accomplished today against some of those early ideas and early plans. But it definitely, in my business, we flight plan all the time. So here recently I flew to Monterey, California and back in one of my airplanes. It required flight planning, determining points, measuring fuel consumption, and determining altitudes, looking at weather. All types of information has to be gathered, implemented into a written plan for execution. And when you grease those wheels on at the destination, and you pop that door open, and you walk out to that car waiting there for you, and you shoot off to wherever you're going, I always measure our success in delivering services to customers in the statement that if you can fly someone across the country and get them to where they're wanting to go, and they never once thought about the flight they were on, you've hit a home run, because you've presented it so perfectly that they didn't think about the fact they were actually on an airplane, because it just went so smooth and they were having so much fun. They got so much work done in the process. Obviously in a private aircraft you can have meetings, you make phone calls, you're on the internet, and literally you look up and say, oh, we're here. I measure that as an amazing success.
Well, I'm hoping that one day I will be able to take you up on more of those opportunities to charter planes.
I'm sure it's soon.
And I will love to be able to do that. So I want to ask you this kind of parting question as we kind of wrap the conversation up. A lot of entrepreneurs listen to the show that are just getting started, or maybe just have the idea. They haven't started yet. So if you were talking to that person, they may be driving their car, they're sitting in rush hour traffic, they're walking the dog in the mornings. What would you say to him or her? Like, what's your pieces of advice, takeaways? Like, do this.
Early on in my process, going back to college, when I was a flight instructor, when I was teaching other people how to fly, I would cut out pictures and put them up on my refrigerator or in my little cubicle or wherever I had wall space. And I would look at that picture every day. And it could be, of course, anything as simple as a car, or something like an airplane, or an image representing what I thought I wanted to be at that given time. And affirm about it. Write affirmations. So I had a book with affirmations in it, and positive statements, things that I wanted to be, where I wanted to go, what I thought, what my visions were. And take them from here and put them on paper, and then put them somewhere where you look at them every day. I mean, I've written on the mirror goals. People do that like you're trying to lose weight. Hey, this is my goal. And those are really essential things that support the perseverance, because I'll give you another P. Perseverance, stick-to-itiveness, just staying the course, because there's so many distractions, especially nowadays, right, in this world. there's so many distractions, and focus is extremely important. You have to stay focused, dedicated. You have to persevere, and I will always integrate faith in that. I'm private in the sense about my faith, but for this purpose, I have to. It's part of my success, so I have to talk about it. I pray daily. I pray about my business, of my employees, my family. I pray for empowerment, for wisdom. Because sometimes you wake up, and I'm sure, and you feel like, boy, that bucket's empty today. I got to come up with something. And so I would say, if you're you're wanting to start out, be an entrepreneur, start your own business. Once you find that passion, that one thing you think, this is it, this is what I want to do, food, aviation, being a restaurant owner, oil and gas, or being a self-help guru, whatever that may be, write it down. Write your ideas down. That's the beginning of what makes it a reality. And then it expands, and eventually a business plan, and you start talking about financial resources and what you need to implement it and make it happen. And then find other people that have done similar things. And don't be afraid to call them up.
Yeah.
And, my partner in the insurance agency started calling me up saying, I just want to have a cup of coffee with you. And he was just picking my brain. And we ended up turning it into very powerful conversations that launched him into a whole new turn in his career. And now here we are later on partners. So it's key to all success is starting small, planting that seed, and nurturing it and letting it grow. Yeah. And that's really what I would recommend.
That's great. Well, thank you, Kevin. This has been very enlightening. Learning more about your story and your background, and getting some of the details that you filled in a lot of the blanks for me, because I knew some of this stuff, but I didn't know all of it, and I hope that the listeners are keyed in on how these 5 Ps can play out in their life. And thank Kevin McCutcheon for making me aware that there are 2 more. It wasn't just 3, it was a full 5. But I also thank you again for letting me take a ride in this beautiful helicopter that's behind us, because the funny story about that is when you said, hey, what are you doing? I was sitting on the front porch. It was on Saturday. What are you doing? I'm like, I'm sitting on the front porch. I guess I was doing emails on my laptop or something. And you're like, you want to go for a ride in the helicopter? I'm like, yeah, what time do I need to be there? And I rode my motorcycle down there. We got in the helicopter. And before we knew it, we were over my house, and you're circling. And I didn't know where. It didn't even occur to me that we would be over my house. And boy, your house looks a lot different from the air. But it was fun to be able to do that. So thank you for that. That was a lot of fun.
In closing this out, once you become blessed, as I have, you find joy in sharing. So it's been a privilege to share that with you, of course, and be a part of your podcast, of course. But the other power in success is when you have that power to share and change other people's lives.
Yeah.
And bring you enlighten people, you enlighten me, actually. And bringing that to people around you is really, I think, something we all are obligated to do, right?
Yeah.
We need to make sure that we brighten our corner of the world, and then share that as best we can with others around us. And you do a great job of that as well.
Well, thanks.
So, no, I giving people rides in my helicopter, or taking them on a trip in a private airplane when they've never been. A quick story, a number of years ago, I was a friend of mine, a dear friend of mine, had a girlfriend at the time. I don't want to get him into trouble because he's been married since, but his girlfriend's grandmother was 93 years old and had never flown in her life, and was in a nursing home in Nashville here. And he asked if she could come for a ride, and I said, I would love that. And I took her for a ride all over Nashville. She had never, ever left the earth. And I thought, what an immense privilege. Flew her all over Nashville, over her retirement home. Some of her mates there at the retirement home were outside waving.
That's great.
But she wrote me a letter, which maybe I can share someday in the future with you, but it will change your life. It really brings meaning to about everything we live for on this earth. So those are the intangibles that you get to experience when you're successful and exposed to so many different people, you get those moments, which really, that connects it all. So
that's great. Well, thank you for sharing that story, and I'll finish up by saying this, that I truly believe that entrepreneurs are the ones that change the world. And I'm very grateful for knowing people like Kevin McCutcheon and the owner of Flight Solutions and all the things that he's been able to accomplish, and have him here on the podcast to talk about his keys to success. And I believe that entrepreneurs change the world, just like he changed the world for that 93-year-old lady who'd never flown before. And for all the people that he's been able to charter airplanes for, or helicopters, or sell or buy aircraft for people, he's changing the world because their experiences and the things that these people are doing, they're getting to make the world a better place. And so for you, as an entrepreneur who's listening or watching this episode, I want you to know that part of my mission in life is to help you get the results you want out of yours. And to that end, one of the things that I do, I am a business consultant and a coach, and people do hire me to consult with their companies, and I do high-ticket coaching, I do group coaching, et cetera. But to the end of actually pouring back into people is every single week I give 1 free hour of coaching to one entrepreneur somewhere around the world on one issue. It's the real Jason Duncan with a real entrepreneur dealing with a real issue. And so if you would like to apply for that free hour of coaching that I do, we do it by Zoom, we do it on video. If you're interested in that, go to therealjasonduncan.com/free coaching. There's a short application there, first name, last name, email address, where you live, and then what your one issue is that you want to talk about. My team will take a look at that, and we select one person every week to get 1 free hour of coaching, which is a very, very good value and will help you get through that one issue. So I am the real Jason Duncan. This is the Root of All Success podcast. We'll see you next week when we talk to another successful entrepreneur, super successful entrepreneur, about his or her journey to success. Until then, remember, Jesus is King.
Thank you for listening to another edition of The Root of All Success with the real Jason Duncan. If you've enjoyed this week's episode, we invite you to visit therootofallsuccess.com to access the show notes and other helpful resources. Take charge of your business. Grow it from great to incredible. Join us again next time here on The Root of All Success.
This podcast is a part of the C-Suite Radio Network. For more top business podcasts, visit c-suiteradio.com.